Rock and roll. Back into the mix with the one and only Mel. How are you, Mel?
I'm very good, thanks, Robett, down in Poniki, and feeling thankful to be in Wellington, and very sorry for our friends in Auckland.
What, just in general, because Wellington's better? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, we're not underwater, I think, is the we managed to dodge that particular bullet. So obviously everybody's got some pretty serious problems to take care of up there at the moment.
So let's. I was trying to think about where to start with this banter, because you're full of passion, you're full of fury, you've got some opinions, and I'm all here for the conversation for it. But I want to maybe start with this. You're a female tech founder in a small country of New Zealand with 5 million people, with a global product that can serve and help billions. How have you found the journey to date with that first starting sentence of what you do to what you're trying to achieve?
I've found the journey to be out of this country incredibly difficult. I think that New Zealanders and the innovation and entrepreneurial community gets very uncomfortable with big global aggressive thinking. And everybody loves to talk a big game about, globally scalable, what does that look like? And then in the next breath, you get told, but you need to stay in New Zealand until you've got $3 million of annual recurring revenue. And it's like, dude, financial technology is a war. And if we sit here in our own country quietly beavering away, our global opportunity is gone. So currently it's a clear sky opportunity for us at the moment. And this is why we've quietly set up our foundations across 4 countries. We want to own this space. And I'm not apologising for being aggressive about that. People have accused me of not being humble. It's not about being humble. It's about winning for our country. We need to start moving our technology exports. I think our leading technology exporter at the moment is Fisher & Paykel on $2.4 billion. But when you start looking around the world at much larger technology companies, 100 billion, 500 billion, $1 trillion. Well, why haven't we got a company like that? Is it that the Chinese or the Americans and the Canadians are smarter than us? No. We just need to be more aggressive and back ourselves and actually put our country in danger of really taking our position on the global tech space.
Well, maybe the simple question should be, when are you quitting the tech space and just get into politics, Mel? Because you've got some solid sound bites that are just firing out. You're about to throw some heat. I like it. So let's dig into a little bit of this. So it feels like, or it sounds like, there's this underlying bit of frustration that's been built because you're in a local market, but you've got a global product. Is the tension from the majority of people that you talk to locally can't actually speak the same language as you because you're thinking bigger? Or like what's the disconnect in terms of alignment of the energy between the local and global market, I guess, that you see?
Courage. So we were supposed to launch in Florida pre-COVID. And then, of course, because we've built an enterprise financial technology platform, we deliver ESG, ethical payments and data. So this is big, hairy stuff, big, hairy opportunities, patents all over the world, blah, 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 big side of the balance sheet. So COVID happened, had to come home, thought, right, well, who's the best client? Who can we help the fastest here? Obviously, the New Zealand government. Every penny that they save is money that they can deploy to the front line. And of course, they're in the business of looking after the people. So we really provide a platform that does that. So while that was happening, we opened an office in Singapore. We're now working in Australia, and we're just about to re-enter the American market. So my thinking has been global from day one, which everybody loves that narrative, but nobody really supports it. So you've got a whole lot of red tape. And what I'm saying is, come on, team, come on, New Zealand, let's roll out the red carpet, not the red tape. How can we escalate faster? How can we run faster? And we're a little naive when it comes to the global market too. This sort of stuff, you're going to war. You can't back in quietly and apologise and be all humble. You've got to actually hit it with, you've got to take an AK-47 to a knife fight, basically.
So I love that thing, red carpet to the red tape, or the red tape to the red carpet. Yeah. Now, is it the same issue of courage that's holding that back? And is it so behind this thing, right? you've got this, oh my gosh, it's so good, it's like local to global, yada, yada, yada. But the disconnect, is it because they don't have the courage themselves internally to believe that? Is it because it's too scary, because it's too big? Is it they're too comfortable in their own spot? Like, what's the energy that you've felt when you've been trying to have this level conversation of high global billion-dollar markets, and then is that instantly because maybe their potential insecurities or whatever, that you're dismissed because of their own things? Like there's a disconnect, and we've talked about this before, right? What do you think that is? Because it sounds like it's a bit more than courage.
Look, I think it's a combination of things. What we're proposing is really disruptive, and I understand that. Nobody else is doing it around the world at the moment. That's why we're so committed to our IP and our globalization strategy. But it's interesting to me, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in America and Asia and Australia. Our country seems to be incredibly shy when it comes to stepping up to that plate. And my question is to New Zealanders, what do you want? What do you want as a country? Do you want to grow our technology exports and exceed our primary export market of 38 billion? What is it that you want? Weightless, borderless, high value technology exports? Or do you want to sit here and just let the whole market take it, and we'll be, late to the party? So I'm very uncomfortable for a lot of people, and I appreciate that. But there's a multitude of reasons, and everything that you've just said, it depends on the person. They're all feeling that. This is what the feedback has been around our country. But, God love us. We do a great job in a lot of areas. But I think this is a sort of area where you just need people with thick skin and some warrior blood to get on with the job. And that's really what I'm doing.
But to that point, though, right, this feels like you still feel there's a massive mindset issue which is actually holding back a lot of like real world growth. The way I think about it is, you have this internal bravery first before you can go and execute externally. What would success look like, or what would need to happen to turn more, I guess, of this warrior spirit that you sort of speak of? Like, do you think it's just a mindset issue? Like, what's the crux of this, which has become, you feel, that is a big handbrake that's actually holding New Zealand Aotearoa back?
I think we have what I call the America's Cup mentality. So nobody supports you until you've got your hands on the cup. They don't support you on the journey to get there. So I guess my job as the CEO and founder of this business is to look after the interests of my clients, my staff, and my shareholders. So I could spend my time in New Zealand arguing and fighting and banging my head against the wall, or I can just get on with the job and scale the business, which is what I'm doing. And, when I've got my hands on my America's Cup, I'm sure I'll come back and, make a bigger contribution to New Zealand. But I'm leaving. I'm out. So I'm basing myself in Singapore, and then I'll be able to service Europe and the US from that market. So it's forced me out of the country, but that's okay because I've got a big fish to land here and a massive opportunity for our business. And we're 83% Māori owned too. So not only am I a woman in fintech, which is less than 1%, I'm an Indigenous woman in fintech. So that's probably, I don't know, even half of that, quarter of that. So we're shifting needles in a lot of areas. And I'm okay with being an outliner because we're actually getting the job done.
Has it already built resentment against your own country where you're from, and you haven't even succeeded yet? Like, you haven't even won yet, and you're already sort of like, are you currently disappointed in Aotearoa, or are you motivated? Are you pissed? Are you resentful? Like that's a huge thing to be bailing because the place that you love so much can't provide what you need.
Am I resentful? I'm disappointed. I think we haven't positioned ourselves for global success. And I think largely we don't really understand what that looks like and what it takes to get there. Rightly or wrongly, that's where we are. So I can either, fight against the machine or just get on with the job, which is what I'm doing. And you hear that a little bit from our friends at Rocket Lab and a few other, quite successful companies out of New Zealand. They had to go outside for support before the support came from within the country. Are we geared to actually grow a globally successful technology sector? That would be my question. What are the policies that we have in place? What is the criteria for support and investment and everything else? Are we positioning ourselves to become winners? And it's all about the prize for me. I'm super competitive. We want to win. So we need the right tools and the right help and the right support to do that. If we can't find it here, we'll go overseas and get it. And I'm very lucky with the relationships that I've got internationally, and they've been super useful to us. And we're now on the brink of something completely amazing for our business because of that.
So New Zealand is losing this opportunity because things are broken within it that you feel aren't there to give you the proper support you need to build what you need right now. What do you think you'd do differently, or what would you have liked to have seen done differently that would have made you not leave Aotearoa?
I just think the support engines that are in place here are not powered to do the job that the entrepreneurs and the founders need them to do. And it's quite interesting. We deal a lot with government, and we respond to RFIs and tenders and all of that kind of stuff. And, we talk a lot about putting out a problem statement rather than a formula for what they want, and let the entrepreneurs and the innovators and the companies come to you with a solution. And I almost feel that the support mechanisms and agencies in New Zealand and the government need to do that, because you hear a lot of talk around, oh, this is not happening, I want this, I need this, it's not being supported, blah, 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 blah. So rather than a waterfall scenario, which is what we've got now, we need a little bit more of an agile working environment to collectively say, what is our mission as New Zealanders? What is our mission as a country? What are we trying to do here, and how do we do it? And you always, every time I go overseas, and I was just recently in Las Vegas with a couple of other New Zealanders, we're talking about what is it that we need, because ultimately nobody loves their country more than a Kiwi, right? So we want us to be successful. Our kids are here, our families are here. This is an amazing country. Let's be more amazinger.
So if you were in charge, would you have, is it a better framework for engagement to investors? Is it better paths to market globally? Is it better advisory networks? Is it capital markets? What's the, to rebuild, if you could wave the magic wand around Aotearoa to have what you feel it needs for these Kiwi companies to hit the global markets, what specifically would you create that doesn't exist or isn't being done well enough?
Yes, and yes, Robett. The whole thing, the whole system isn't serving the people. And if people are a little bit more honest about that, maybe we could get some better frameworks and better systems in place. But the policies that are handed down and delivered are designed to protect the agencies, not elevate entrepreneurs and international growth, in my opinion.
How so?
Well, you've got to hit certain revenue thresholds. So, for example, we're an enterprise company. We've got the largest enterprise type of client signed already, and we're servicing them in this country. But we're not an enterprise country. We're a SME country. So, to expect a New Zealand enterprise size platform to hit those there's no customers here. We have to go offshore. So
I see what you're saying.
So it needs to be a little bit more of a case-by-case basis. And it's not, and I understand the decisions that they make because they're only working to the policies that they've got. So the policies need some work. And then my question would be to the policy makers, what is your outcome that you want here? What is the mission of this country? Because we've built some great technology here and we've got some amazing founders. And I admit, the reason that this business is still going and we're still here is that I'm bloody relentless and absolutely committed to what we're doing. I'm a fighter, I'm an absolute warrior. And it concerns me, I think sometimes, what happens with the companies that come through with the amazing technology that don't have the type of street fighter CEO that I am? Do they just die? Well, how many opportunities are we missing as a country to start elevating our position globally in terms of technology exports? And I think about that sometimes a little bit late at night. And yeah, it would be interesting to see the numbers on that.
My brain goes to the spot where you raise an interesting question, Mel, around the headspace of, if you didn't have the headspace, or if the average, the majority of Kiwi founder CEOs potentially would have quit a lot long ago if they were in potentially your shoes, right? So there's that fight. But to your point, if there were better policies of this or that, or if it became a bit easier for them, some of these great ideas wouldn't get maybe so many red flags, hit so many walls or whatever, and then that frustration they actually might get through. So you kind of wonder, probably to your point, Mel, is how much greatness has actually been lost because the founder potentially wasn't equipped, or didn't have the best support system, or they didn't have the right, didn't go into the right program, or whatever it may be. So that's actually lost opportunity for New Zealand, which I'm imagining goes against what these missions and values and everything for the country is. So it becomes a bit of a thing. But it's a good point you raise about the having enterprise KPIs in the market with none of those enterprise customers, because it becomes probably a little bit trickier for it. Okay, so your headspace is now going, okay, we're thinking big, we're going big global opportunities. New Zealand's not it for us right now. I love home, but they don't have what we need for us to grow. I like to say when instead of if, when you build this $1 billion business and then you get all the praise and the front page of everything in New Zealand, and then you'll be welcomed home with the red carpet. At that moment, will you feel more justified that you knew you were right, or more pissed and resentful that the people who were supposed to support you the entire time didn't, just like the Flight of the Conchords after they blew up on HBO? Or have you pre-thought, or are you that stubborn that you're going to use this as fuel to be like, stuff you, and then make it massive, and then be like, I told you so in 5-10 years, whatever? Where's your headspace?
It's definitely petrol in the tank. There's nothing I love more than somebody telling me I can't do something. Love it. So this is, whatever's happened in this country has really given me that impetus and that absolute desire to smash it. So that's my focus here. But, along the way, I'm meeting some really great investors and some really intelligent, smart, driven people. And, when this business is in somebody else's hands, I'm going to loop back around and say, okay, so this is the pathway. This is some frameworks. These are my experiences as a New Zealand-based enterprise technology founder. Let me help. Because there's very clear areas that we need some assistance. And of course, I've got a sales and marketing background as well. So it's all about selling. We've got to sell our country, sell our technology, and grow our market. And that's what I'm very good at. But along the way, I've also made some amazing friends in so many countries that I can just send a WhatsApp message to. And then all of a sudden, I've got a meeting with the Federal Senate at the Capitol Hill building. So that's the power of the connections that I have now. And I'm very lucky to have those connections, and I'm aware of that. So I want to share that back to New Zealand and other entrepreneurs when I've got some headspace to do that.
So let's jump there for a second. Connections globally. How have you built your networks, and how important actually are they? Like, how have you managed to, do what you've done, and to, even just that thing to, meeting with government officials or whatever. How important are these connections, and how have you built them that others could potentially learn off?
I'm a big talker, Robett. So you drop me in a business lounge somewhere, and I've got half a dozen friends and business cards before I leave. So it's been really organic and super interesting. LA Airport, Hong Kong Business Lounge, in the US, and in Singapore. I literally gave somebody an elevator pitch in the elevator in Atlanta, which was hilarious. So I think people admire my grit. Obviously, as a New Zealander of Indigenous background and a woman in fintech, I super stand out as well. But our secret sauce as New Zealanders is our integrity, and we're authentic, and international folks really like that. So they want to help us. And they're super excited about what we're doing. So I'm just a chatter and a networker, and I'm interested in what other people are doing. So that's something that just comes naturally to me. So I'm very blessed to have that skill, and it's been vitally important. I've, as I said, presented at the Capitol Hill building. I've I rock up to Singapore, and if there's somebody in the American network I need, I can ring up the guys down at the US Embassy. I've got friends there. I've got, mates all over the place. And it very much is, hey, dude, can you help me with something? And, people are willing to help. So that's amazing and quite humbling that I have access to these types of people.
Well, it's also as well just the fact of, yes, it's Kiwis and this and that, but you'll realise when you start travelling the world, it's still a pretty small place, and these relationships of one person can connect into all sorts of random different worlds. You've brought up something a couple of times now, which I jumped into, you're Indigenous woman in the tech space and fintech space of all that. So you're kind of like the 1% of the 1%. What is your journey actually been like around raising capital not just raising capital for startups, but also as a woman and Indigenous and whatever like this? You're already like the 1% of the 1%. How has that journey been for you in terms of capital raising for a startup, especially with global ambitions, but in a local country?
It's been fascinating, and I've learned a lot. I mean, when it all boils down to it, what is the number one thing that the investor wants you to do? They want you to make money. So how do you de-risk the opportunity for them to make money? There's some talk going on LinkedIn at the moment. I've got a friend, Nicole. She has an entity called NCR, which is Next Chapter Rise, based out of Hong Kong, and it's to support female founders. And they were talking about female founders now getting even less VC funding than they were getting last year. And I'm kind of really sick of hearing this narrative. I think it's less than 1.9%, and it's less than 1% of VC funding investment goes to fintech founders. It's time to just rip the Band-Aid off. I mean, we're all, for want of a better term, put our big girl knickers on and have a robust discussion around what's going on. Why won't you invest in female founders? Do you think we're not tough enough? Do you think we're not focused enough? Do you think we're not aggressive enough? Is this what the story is? Because we all know we're going to war when you've got a disruptive tech company, no doubt. So what is holding you back from that investment? And then there was another comment around sole founders. So I find that really interesting, because how many companies do you know with multiple founders that have a massive falling out in a power struggle? And secondly, part of the yardstick that you measure a successful CEO with is their ability to build a great team. So if the team is amazing, but there's a sole founder, I would have thought that was actually a plus from an investor's perspective. So that's a really interesting thing, but it's been. I've had a few experiences where a female associate has got super excited about me and then pitched it to the more senior men in the investment company and been squashed, and the young female associates don't fight for you. So I've got a personal friend who's a VC, a German guy, and I said to him, how many investments have you made into female-founded businesses? None. And I said, why not? And he said, because in his opinion and in his experience, the women aren't as committed and that they're bored housewives. Wow.
I think I know who you're talking about, but we can leave that comment there. I'm interested in your point you just said before around the robust discussion. So what do you feel is actually going on with why this is less than 1.9% to females and less than 1% to fintech? What is the actual conversation which no one is having with why the number is so skewed?
I think my personal opinion on it is I think that VCs are nervous about investing in women because it is a fight. When you're founding a new company, it is a war. And I think they think perhaps women don't have the skill set to navigate that, is my feeling.
And those numbers don't lie. It's disproportionately men and disproportionately white men.
Well, but the data supports the argument. But it's interesting, the data also supports the fact that female-founded companies, on average, return a 75% greater profit margin than male founders. So, what is it that you want as investors? Do you want to make money? Well, then you need to start broadening your scope. If you want to make more money, you need to start broadening the scope. And if there is areas that you think the company needs assistance, assist.
So for the conversations you've had in terms of investment when it comes to Aotearoa versus globally, what's been the difference of energy with the same conversation that you have, but with a New Zealand investor and an overseas investor? What similarities,
Oh,
differences?
chalk and cheese.
How so?
Um, well, I think statistically, more people invest in racehorse syndicates in New Zealand than invest in startups. I love that stat. Former pony girl myself. But I think it's just, size and scale, size and scale. And New Zealanders get nervous when you have, a massive vision and a massive global market, because that then delivers massive numbers. And it's not something New Zealanders are used to looking at. So we're kind of shy around that. Totally different narrative out of Singapore and the US. They want, if you're not talking billions of dollars in revenue, don't bother turning up. They don't want to know you. So we're very much better suited to Australia and the US and Singapore in terms of the investor matching. Yeah.
There was a friend of mine one of the vice presidents of one of the big hedge funds over here, and he was talking about the New Zealand market, and he was like, quote, "I'm not trying to sound like an arsehole, Robett, but unfortunately your country's a little too fractional for me to really care about." Fractional. He used the word fractional for our entire, because I was saying, he was asking about the PVC market, and I was like, I think it's about 2 billion. I think it's about 2 billion. And he's like, oh yeah, well, my last round was like 18 billion. And I'm like, okay, there's just sort of levels to the stuff. But to the same time, did you find when you talked about the big numbers, which you thought you were big in New Zealand, when you bring them to the States, they're actually just normal numbers? Was that kind of like, was it weird to normalize what you thought was big as kind of normal? Like, did that kind of, was it a bit of a mind stuff when you were having these chats?
No, it wasn't, because my numbers have always been American sized. My appetite for the business is American sized, where America is 60 times larger than New Zealand. I mean, we call the company RIPA Global for a reason. Our eyes were always on those bigger markets. And of course, with the emerging markets, we can springboard from Singapore into Vietnam and Philippines, and those are nice size markets as well. We're doing some really important work now in Australia, so that's 23 million. We've got a total addressable market for our product of 8 to 11 trillion.
Jeez.
So that is American sized. And we've got all of the data to support that too. So they think I'm cray in this country because of those numbers. But if you want to check our data, you're more than welcome to. We've got it. So, we're aggressive. We want a good proportion of that market, and we want to move as fast as we can to get it.
So you brought up a lot of different locations, a lot of different places, kind of a global vision to where the company's been from day one. How have you sort of navigated time zones, teams, scalability, communications, alignment, culture, like this whole global package team thing? How have you navigated that on your journey so far?
Well, we're a software house. So for us, and a cloud-based platform. So scalability for us is not painful in terms of the technology scale. We're quietly sitting in 28 countries already. So then it's been, and I've got a sales background, so we're going to get pulled in by the customer. It's all customer led. Who wants to pay for our technology? And that's where we really start those conversations. Navigating the time zones, look, that's tough. I mean, obviously I'm the global warrior at this point, but what I have done is I've designed deployment units, which sounds very Navy SEALs, but what's the front end team need to look like that you can drop into each country and localize the language and the functionality and all of that, because I think that's really important too. We've already coded our technology. We're bilingual. We're available here in Te Reo. So multiple tax rates, all of that kind of stuff, it's irrelevant to us. That causes no pain for our development team at all. But it's a little tiring. It's a little tiring. This year is going to be a massive year for our company. We're all in full scale mode now. And that's super exciting, but it's all customer pull. So I'm not going to go to a country that doesn't want to pay for us. And that's been my strategy right from the start.
And do you have any ways you keep your balance up with some? I'm imagining you're doing phone calls at all times of the day, all sorts of stuff. Like, how are you balancing off? Are you just realize have you just basically said, stuff it, I'm in the washing machine, let's just flip and go? Or have you tried to find gaps where you can have your own space? Is it gym? Is it yoga? Is it meditation? Is it like how are you sort of navigating that whole thing? Because it's obviously a moving beast, but at the same time, if you fall over, the whole thing sort of does. So how are you balancing that up?
Yeah, I've de-risked the company because we've got people within the business that could step into my shoes. I've been very careful with that. We've brought in a shareholder who's formerly had a very successful consulting technology business. So if I got hit by a bus tomorrow, we'd be good. So I've de-risked the company like that. But in terms of how I manage my own energy levels, I love what I do. I love what I'm doing, and that helps. And our technology actually changes people's lives. So this is a passion project for me. But I gym a lot. I'm careful with what I eat and drink and all of that kind of stuff, and look after myself in a way that I'm an athlete. So my job as the CEO is to be the fittest, most balanced person I can possibly be, while still delivering. But the reality is, when you're the founder and you're in that senior C-suite team, just thinking about the business 18 hours a day anyway. But it's just about, managing all of the different priorities. When I'm in Singapore, it's quite good because New Zealand's up earlier. So 5:00 in the morning, I'm having comms with the team here, and then I can work in Singapore. It's that when it's from Singapore to the US, it gets a little bit trickier.
So, running the clock back a bit, if you were trying to do the same thing now, and you're at a young family at home, how would you try to navigate it differently, or how would you approach it differently then? Because obviously, because your children are older now, how would you have done it? Because I know so many founders, especially with like young family, like they have to do their times. I'm similar. Like I'll get up at 5, and then I'll do the night thing. How would you approach it differently if you had young fam now with whānau?
Well, I'm a single mum.
Could you? Yeah.
No, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Done it. I mean, my kids are now 13 and nearly 16, and at boarding school. Thank the Lord for that. But if I didn't have a partner to help with that, I think it'd be impossible. It would be because you're emotionally, you've got a commitment to your children first. Me personally, I wouldn't have done it. I mean, I was the rugby coach, the cricket coach. I chaired the parent committee. I raised all the money, blah, blah, blah. I was that parent, and I did that. And then when the children were ready and a little bit more independent and self-managing, go time on the business.
Yeah, I get that. I'm in a similar boat. My daughters are 4 and 5 now, so they're starting to, get to their own little routines during the day. So I'm starting to get a bit of time back to sort of build out. But there was definitely priority. You're quite prolific. Prolific's the word. You get your thoughts out there on LinkedIn. You push what you're thinking, what you're getting up to. You document it out. How's the journey been around? I guess documenting, that mission and journey and insights on public platforms. And have you sort of found that experience of, getting the word about you, your company, how you sort of building it and running a bit of brand for yourself?
Look, I think LinkedIn's a really important tool. I'm mindful of my position as a woman, Indigenous woman, Māori woman in New Zealand, and people are watching me, and it's that case of see it and be it. So I feel a responsibility to my community to say, hey, listen, you can do this. Let's up the engagement of women in tech too. Something like horrendous, like 25% at the moment. So that's part of what I'm doing, but also I call myself a change maker because we are changing the way that governments deploy funds and data. And that's really important too because of the impact that it has on people's lives and also the environment. So that's good. But obviously recently with the Prime Minister resigning, I was a bit disappointed as a New Zealander to see the lack of decorum around her and the personal attacks and the gossiping and the backstabbing is what it felt like. It felt like we're a country of mean girls for a couple of weeks, and rightly or wrongly, whatever your political views are or opinions, that's fine, but she's still a human, and she put herself out there. So don't like her, don't vote for her. Don't like the Labour Party, don't vote for them. You don't need to be mean and nasty and just, quite toxic on that. It just inflames people. So yeah, it was disappointing to see our behaviour as New Zealanders around that period in our history.
Well, there's two parts to it. One, I'm sure, it probably cements the icing on the cake even more with mentally why you're tapping out, because that's the energy you don't want to be around to try and build what you're trying to do globally as well. If you're already leaving Aotearoa for that, it's like, and this is how you treat people. Second part to it, which I probably agree with as well, is just the thought around, it's one thing to be against someone's policies and politics, but when it's personal about the person, it's like, what fight are you actually fighting? Are we having a conversation around, this policy sucks because it's doing this, or this is great because it's doing that, or she's just a bitch and she sucks, stuff you type thing. It felt like, and I probably agree with you as well, it got personalized to the person as the person, not the politics and the policy. Like they were fighting. It felt like the anger went to a thing. And what I was thinking about it, and I said on this other thing I did was, it'd be a different story if Jacinta was John and that was 6'4", 100 kgs and just yoked of just alpha male, right? I can almost guarantee the same momentum and energy would be disproportionately less talking about the person as the person than the politics and the policies. It's just throwing it out there. I think that would potentially be the case. And it kind of, I probably agree with you as well, probably disappointing quite a little bit too, right?
Oh, very. I mean, I'm very proud of our country, but, let's take a sip of reality tea here. She's one person in a party. She's part of a team. So to attack her for every policy and every government decision and every this and this and this, it reeks of stupidity, not just mean girl stuff. But it's disappointing. We're better than this, and I mean, everywhere you go internationally, New Zealanders and in particular her are talked about with, and celebrated. And, I don't think people realise what an impact she had for our country internationally. How many Uber drivers talk about, oh, your Prime Minister had to navigate this and this and this and this. And Americans to know what's going on in a tiny little country at the end of the world is pretty important. So it's just, I think we were better than how we behaved in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Do you think that the energy that came in the 3-4 weeks was been this under-bubbling scent of potential division in the nation, which has stemmed out through the last three years with COVID and lockdowns and people think locked away, COVID, pandemic, recession, stress, economic, pressure, all these other things? Do you think it has been building up to a point, or do you think we've just slowly changed over time? How did we get like this, and when did it happen?
I think we have just endured an unprecedented amount of stress, and I think it's had a massive effect on our mentality and our mental health as a nation. We were on our knees. We're still largely on our knees, and I think that we're looking for the quick fix. We're looking for how we're going to get out of this, and there just isn't a quick fix. And I think as business owners, I mean, we've all seen, the rise in suicide, a 600% increase in violence against supermarket staff. People are hurting. People are really hurting. So what I would love for our country to do is focus our energy on how do we collectively work together to fix this. Let's not just blame the government. Let's not just blame the policies or the Prime Minister. What can we do to help our people and help our country? And that's where I'm putting my energy.
If you're Prime Minister, what would you do? Oh.
I'd obviously have a lot of meetings with everybody else that's involved in the government. But I think for me, we need to firstly retain the people. We've got a massive labour shortage. See that Australia is doing 3-day visas for nurses and teachers. We need to move faster on that. We need to start looking at where is productivity dropping here in our country. Where can we start accelerating our productivity, exporting, making more money? We need to, I think, start a massive. I'm a huge fan of automation, because what that does is it actually allows people to stop doing manual, low-paying tasks and frees them up to learn some new skills. I mean, we know we've got a massive shortage of technology engineers in this country? Why are we not focusing on training and elevating to those tasks? People is a little bit scared of automation. They talk, oh, jobs are going to go. Yes, but there's so many other jobs that will pay you a shit ton more money, which means that you can then generate more tax, and then it elevates the levels of the river, right? And this is really what we're wanting to do. So that would be my focus. Retaining the talent that we've got, making it easier for them to stay, and putting New Zealand in danger of recovery. That's what I'll be doing.
Well, when you're talking, I think tech now is maybe the second or third biggest export in the nation. The crazy part is, in a world where it's weightless and you can fully scalable, whatever, we don't have a full magnet for global talent that are tech-based to just be able to come to New Zealand and bring the goodness with them, right? Like, it doesn't feel like there's a magnet of opportunity that's enabling and empowering and becoming this massive big olive branch of awesomeness to bring all this amazing tech talent down. Sorry, go.
People love our country. There's no two ways about that. And here we go with that red carpet, not red tape policy, right? So right at the moment, there's hundreds and thousands of tech workers in San Francisco being laid off left and right. Hello. Now, MB ran a massive program in Wellington about 4 or 5 years ago called Look See, and they brought in a whole lot of people, but it wasn't quite executed well. They all came to have a look, but didn't stay. But now that the position that the US is in, I'm sure you'd get a much bigger uptake. I mean, we're trying to hire engineers now. And so when we started talking, and of course I've recently in San Francisco, everybody's working from home, so it was really hard to spot them. But where's the call? Where's the caller? Where's the invitation? Let's get them down here. And that's really what needs to be happening at the moment.
It's tricky, right? Because, you love the country so much, you're, empathetic around the individuals doing it that run the policies, but then you disagree with some of the policies, which has made you kind of want to leave. So you tippy-toe in this tension of like genuine care, but also kind of frustration, right? Like, I love so much about this, but it hasn't done this for me. So like, how do you think you'll resolve the organic tension that's, I guess, built on your career path to date as you continue on for the next chapter?
Well, I'm not going to resolve it. What I need to do is not put any energy into it. What I need to do is put energy into growing a successful business. And then when I'm in a position to expend energy on elevating our country, then that's where my interest will lie. It's quite interesting when you look at charitable works executed by New Zealanders. It's people who have made an awful lot of money and been very successful, and they're pumping money back into areas of our community that actually really need it. So I'm kind of thinking, well, let's just park the frustration of what's going on here. We've got a very focused growth strategy. We've got some massive opportunities for our business. Let's just get on with the business of the business, and then I'll circle back to what I can do as a New Zealander to actually elevate our own country.
And just like that. I really appreciate your time, Mel. Always lovely bantering with you, and it was great to be able to see you go deep on a couple of things which you haven't done before here too, which was super cool. So best of luck for the journey. New Zealand will be happily welcoming you home with the red carpet when you sell for billions and IPO on the NASDAQ or whatever it is that comes next. And best of luck on the journey ahead. Awesome work.
Thanks, Robett. Take care.